Tell me, what financial system are black people in
Okay,
charge of?
let's
What
take.
healthcare system are black people in charge of? What government system are black people in
I'm
charge
about
of?
ready to tell
What
you.
prison system are black
I'm
people in
about ready to
charge?
tell you.
I'm not talking about mayors. I already know that talking point, sir. I go on Fox News all the time as well. So let's not go there with that. I said, what system have we created? Have
Goodness.
we implemented that we have been in charge of? Name one.
Is this why you don't like talking to black women, Larry Elder?
Wow. Baltimore. Freddie.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Conservative Poet with me, Amania. So happy about today's video, so excited. We're going to be seeing Larry Elder, who has gone onto the Breakfast Club for an interview to talk about his candidacy for president. And so I'm really excited about it. Larry Elder is I love him. I listen all the time. I was watching his race in California. I was really disappointed in how things turned out. But he's gonna talk today. It's gonna be amazing. This is gonna be a long form video, but I will be breaking it down into short bites at some point. So without further ado, let's get into this video. Let's go.
JNV, Charlemagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have Teslin Figueroa with us. And we got a special guest in the building. 2024 Republican presidential candidate, Larry Elder. Welcome, brother.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor.
How you feeling?
I feel good.
He does more than that, though. I mean, he was a radio host.
Radio host for 40 years.
Author, TV host.
Author,
New York
host.
Times best-selling list. I've got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Corner of Hollywood and Vine, Southeast corner, just saying.
Okay.
I didn't know you had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, about a handful of radio guys do, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, I think it's you, Elvis Duran,
Angie
Howard
Martinez.
Stern,
Yeah.
Big Boy. Oh,
Angie
Angie Martinez.
A guy named Arthur Godfrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into it. Why are you running for president?
Well,
Before Larry starts in, I just want to say they lay it out nicely, letting you know that this is not some person who has never served in office before, who has never done anything in the society before. This man is an author, radio host. He ran for governor of California. I mean, this man has really been there, 71 years old, a patriot and somebody who we can learn a lot from. So let's see how the three Breakfast Club hostesses treat this man, another black man running for office. If we're going to have the same nonsense that they gave to Vivek Ramaswamy at their last interview with a candidate. So let us see how this interview is going to go. Let's see if they learned their lesson from the last interview, right? Let's see if they learned their lesson. Here we go.
Well, I'm running as an America First mega guy, and we have an America First mega guy running, obviously. So the question is, what do you bring to the table?
You say MAGA.
MAGA.
Okay.
And the answer is, I bring a lot of issues to the table that I feel our side is not talking enough about, if at all. For example, the number one social problem in America, by far, is the epidemic not of COVID, but of fatherlessness. 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. Now 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother. And the stats are clear. Even Barack Obama once cited them. If you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happening?
If Obama say it, then you know it's true, because Obama's word is gold. Gold.
Happened. In the mid-'60s, with I think the best of intentions, a Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And since then, we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. You know, when I say this to people, the pushback I get is, well, there are lots of things that are going on, systemic racism, poverty. Here's the problem. If you look at a young black male aged 10 to 43, that's young to me because I'm 71 years old. A young black man in that demo is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same demo. Young black man, real young, 19 and under, the number one cause of preventable death is homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black male. Same demo for whites. The number one cause of preventable death is unintentional deaths. That includes drug overdoses, automobile accidents, drownings. It's not until they get to number 4 that death is the cause. In America, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides are committed by black people, often against other black people. Of the homicides in this country, half of them are black victims, almost all killed by other blacks. How do you explain that if it isn't for the absence of fathers? Are you prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime? I doubt it. And the go-to reaction often is poverty and systemic racism. Here's the problem. 1940, when there was blatant racism, this is before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Civil Rights Act of 64, KKK was still alive and well, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%. You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and neither side is talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they caused it with the welfare state, and our side does not talk about it because if you're white, you'll be accused of dissing single moms who are heroically raising these kids, or you'll be accused of being a racist, or if you're black, you'll be accused, as I was by the LA Times, of being the black face of white supremacy. Nobody's talking about that. I am.
What are the reasons, if your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
As I said, it's because in the mid-60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. In Charlemagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites. In 1965.
Yes. Women are pretty much married to the government, and that's how it started. It started all those years ago, and it has continued until this day. And the problem has grown and grown and grown, where they offer this to people in general just to get them off, just to get them on their feet. And so, and they didn't say you had to sign up for it, but people signed up for it. It was up there. It was an option. And so you go out there and you sign up for it. But the black folks seem to have attached themselves to it. And the more they attached themselves to it, the more it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, and has taken over such a big amount of the black population that there is no room for the men anywhere. I mean, the numbers are stagnant. And being in the housing business, I've seen this firsthand, where a lot of the girls, they can't have the guys in the house. Section 8's coming for an inspection. You better hide your man or you better put his ass out. Well, I never put up with any of that. But my point is that still today, women are faced with that same situation. You want Section 8 housing, then you can't have your man in the house. Therefore, he's going to go out he's going to be sleeping around different women's houses. And what's he going to do? Have babies with that one, have babies with that one, have babies with that one. And he has no real home with that woman. And if he's lucky, he's got himself a little place. Maybe he's rent a room somewhere. Maybe he got a basement somewhere. And that's the life of a lot of the black men. Because again, this whole welfare setup has separated the men and the women. And so we can't be a unit because the government is in between us. And that's what's happening in the black community, especially with, what they're talking about right there. But let's see how this goes.
8% of whites entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. Now it's about 25%, also up threefold. Look at census data, 1910, 1920, 1930, in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Philadelphia, a young black kid was slightly more likely to be brought into a world with a father in the home married to the mother than a young white kid. We have incentivized this kind of bad behavior, and it's had a disproportionately bad effect on the black community.
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried.
What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder? You tell me. Larry Elder. Let me pull my Charlemagne. Larry Elder. What do white people do wrong? Because you hear talking about black people. Black. Everything you talk about is the black man not doing good. What do white people do wrong? What do they do wrong, Larry Elder? You tell me.
about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe there's
No, there used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'll probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's to break down the family. There's
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, you know. But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I asked you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. And I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you say...
Right there. Absolute truth. Larry Elder is absolutely right. Back in the day, people were afraid. Kids were afraid of their parents. They would not be out late. The parents would know where they were. There wasn't any cell phones, for you to keep calling up and doing all that. There wasn't even any of that. And another thing that they were afraid of their parents. They were afraid. You couldn't be hanging out with your friend and he says, "Hey man, let's go down to the mall there and let's get us some shoes, get us some sneakers from Macy's or whoever. Let's get us some Nikes, man." They'd be like, "No, man. My daddy gonna ask me where I got those Nikes from. What am I gonna tell him? What am I gonna tell him? I went and robbed the mall? No, I can't do that." So no. So crime was lower back then because the kids had respect for self and they had respect for their parents, and they had respect for their community. Not saying things didn't go wrong that people didn't do. You had some people, of course, you're going to always have. But I'm saying the majority of people would think twice, or the kids would think twice about going out here and doing something that they know is going to get back to their parents, because they know if it does, daddy don't play that. He will put his foot up your ass. He will put down the beat down. Okay, they knew this. But in this day and age, we ain't got no daddies to do that. The daddies aren't there. And so we've got the mamas there, and the mamas are saying, "Hey son, when you grab you a Nike, don't forget to grab me a Louis Vuitton. Grab me that Louis. Grab me that Louis, boy. Make sure you come home with that Louis for mama." When you grab yourself that Louis belt or whatever they take. We're moving on.
People do. I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone re-elected a black president. The three biggest cities in America are New York, Chicago, LA. They all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlemagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed. And he said, "I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time." Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama, elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the 3 largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious organization of doctors, the American Medical Association, would have 2 black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have 2 black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop, which is the speech he gave right before he got assassinated, the day before. And now we act as if Barack Obama never even got elected. And we're still talking about systemic racism. It's not fair, it's wrong, and you're discouraging black people from working hard. 1996.
Okay.
What the hell was that? Oh, that's Teslin Figaro coming onto the scene. That's how she enters into the situation, into the conversation. That's how she enters into the conversation. Let's go with her. Let's go.
Mr. Elder, quick question. Let's just remove the word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers, a conversation down the water hole. Let's just focus on the word system.
Okay.
You mentioned that the system was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the black family, should certainly have some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for
you said
improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in
Okay.
charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of black people were Democrats, as the majority of black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system. Who was in charge of the system at the time?
Who is she talking to? Remember the main idea. The main idea that we're talking about is the systems. I need you to focus, Larry Elder. I need you to focus on what we're talking about. We're talking about the systems. We're not talking about this. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about this. We're talking about the systems. Service. This woman is a disgrace. She say, yeah, the black people has some, what'd she say, some work to do?
The Democrats at the time, the system. I'm just going to Charlamagne's point about white or black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the black family, I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions. And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right, and what I'm asking was, it white people, so I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. Was it white people in charge of the system or black people in charge of that system that helped break down the black family? It's a simple, yes, just a simple question, white or black?
Well, you didn't have to go on welfare unless you voluntarily chose to go on welfare. The inducement was put there by Democrats, by the left.
Correct? Okay. Democrats,
well, most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people.
Not
too.
voters. I said who's in charge of the system.
Well, who puts them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson white or black?
Who puts them in charge?
Maybe that'll help.
Fine. Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay. But if your argument is that the reason he did it is because of racism, then I disagree. He did it because of...
That's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question. Was he white or black? Charlamagne?
And Mr. Elder, you said you talked about the smashing.
Yo. I just ask you a simple question. That's all I ask. That's all I know. I don't know nothing else. All I want is a simple question. Give me a simple answer to my simple question. Was he white or he black? Well, friend, he was Democrat. And guess who? To Larry Elder's point, who voted them in? The black people. The black Democrats voted the men. They voted in the white supremacist man to come in and to put these systems in place that chained them up, pretty much, right? Changed them in place. The Democrats did that. But black Democrats did that. They voted for that. They voted for their own demise, right? They voted for that. And they continue to vote for that till this day. I mean, these people, have they not learned nothing since that time of Lyndon B. Johnson? Since the welfare system was put in place, since all that was put in place, since they removed the men from the homes, all these years later, we're still dealing with the same thing. The women and the girls are still dealing with the same thing. And they're still voting Democrat. The white liberal progressive has always been it. They've been the KKK. They've been all of it. And it continues today. But today they've turned it around and said, they's your friend. Well, they said that back then too. It's a shame, but that was his point, is that black Democrats put those systems in place by voting in those white, what do they call them? White supremacists, to put you in those systems she likes so much.
Grabs, right? And I find that interesting because, when you see the mass shootings that happen, majority of those people are white males. What do you think about that?
Actually, if you look at the percentage of whites in America, which is 60%, the percentage of mass shooters is under that. The percentage of people that commit hate crime is under that. The percentage of people who are serial killers is under that. Black people are 13% of the population. We commit a greater percentage compared to that of mass shootings.
We talked about the smash and grabs, though. So I was saying, since you're using that as an example, I'm saying, well, what about the mass shooters that are usually white males?
One more time. They are usually white males because 60% of the country is white. However, they underrepresent in terms of the number of mass shootings. About 50% or so of the mass shootings in this country are committed by white people, even though white people are 60% of the population. They underrepresent. We overrepresent when it comes to hate crime, when it comes to mass shootings, when it comes to serial killings, when it comes to robberies, when it comes to virtually every category of violent crime. We overrepresent.
So what do white people do wrong?
So we are 13%, right, of the population. 13%. White people make 60%. And for Charlemagne, he's saying, well, the mass shootings. There are some mass shootings, but the mass shootings are not as much as the crime that the 13% makes, if that makes any sense, because the 13% is smaller, therefore there shouldn't be that much crime. The 60%, because being that there's so much more of them, they should be the mass people committing the crimes, but it's not. It's the 13%. The 13% is making more crime. But Charlemagne the God don't see that. They don't understand that.
I'm gonna keep asking you that because I want.
It seems to me, rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want to blame. You want me to talk about how bad white people are, which I don't think is a particularly productive thing to do.
Well, I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
Well, I just told you, if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when America really had systemic racism in 1940. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of blacks live below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of black on black crime.
Probably because we had no
But they still were living below the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward.
Can I just address that? In 1940, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. 1960, that number had fallen to 47%. That's a 40-point drop in 20 years. That's the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for black people in the history of America. Again, well before Brown versus Board of Education, well before the KKK imploded, well before we had race-based preferences. Why? Because it was rare for a black kid to be raised in a family without a father in the home. A strong belief in Judeo-Christian values, a belief in patriotism, even as America wasn't applying these values to black people, obviously, and a belief in entrepreneurship. All those things are now under assault by organizations like Black Lives Matter. Charlemagne, Black Lives Matter had on their website an attack on the nuclear family. The founders are self-described Marxists, trained Marxists. Marx wanted to dethrone God, was an atheist, and Marx did not believe in capitalism, let alone entrepreneurship. All the things that made black people still survive in virulent racism are now under attack by organizations like Black Lives Matter.
All of those things have always been under attack by white supremacy. You can go back to things like whether it's the Tulsa race massacres. Like every time black people do create these systems that are our systems and we are the entrepreneurs, it seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time, look.
So Charlemagne's point right here, every time we create systems for our people, for our thing, So wouldn't that be some sort of segregation when you talk about that? Well, we're creating our own thing. You can't have none of this. You can't be a part of this. We doing our own thing. We're excluding the Chinese, we're excluding the whites, we're excluding the Indians, we're excluding the purples, and we're excluding the greens. Isn't that segregation? We're creating our own and the rest of the society can't get involved because this is our own. Oh, but the white supremacists will find a way to get in. But if it's the other way around, if whites say this is just for whites, green can't come in, black can't come in, purple can't come in, yellow can't come in, this is all for whites, then that's a problem. Oh, then you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're a xenophobe, you're a homophobe, you're a psychophobe, you're in all kinds of phobes. But if the black man say this is ours and you can't come in, then it's all good.
The Tulsa massacre, within about 5 years, that whole area was rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
Yeah, who destroyed it to begin with?
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it. We've had race riots, but so have Japanese.
So you do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
You know, I never even came close to saying. I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just saying you don't think it's systemic racism?
Not anymore. Obviously, there was. We had something called slavery. We had something called Jim Crow.
That destroyed black. Hold on, sir. That was the system that destroyed Black Wall Street. It's the same system right now that's not even wanting to pay those same living descendants, because I know your position on reparations, but those same living descendants of Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And then you go on to say that the system, the quote unquote system, is also trying to destroy President Trump. So I'm just so confused on, do you believe that the system can destroy or not? You pick and choose, sir, and that's what's so confusing to me. You just said it wasn't racism. Now it is racism. When it was time to build it back, there was no racism.
I said it wasn't systemic racism. Let's talk about.
So what are you just hung up on the words?
Can I just make this point, Charlemagne, please? Let's take Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans were the first ethnic group to be excluded.
Hold on, Larry Elder. Hold on. Let me address this bitch. She is truly the pit bull. I'm thinking when they sent the memos down and said, we're going to have Larry Elder on the program. We're going to have, he's a black conservative Christian. Yeah? And we're going to need you to attack him from every angle. We're going to need you to pull out the bulldog setup and attack him at every angle. No matter what he says, I need you to jump. No matter what he does, I need you to jump. No matter what he does, I need you to get in there and devour this man, because we don't want his points to get across. And even if you sound stupid dum-dum, even if you sound stupid ridiculous, it don't matter. You make those points and you stick to them, because this is why you're here, to push our narrative, to push our thoughts, to push our vision, to push our plan. And so when Larry Elder come on here, common sense, black conservative, when he comes on here, you take him down. Pitbull. What do you call her? Pity, what's her name? Oh God, Figaro. Pitbull Figaro. We'll call her Pitbull Figaro. Pitbull Figaro.
With an Immigration Act in the late 1800s. They had riots against Chinese in L.A., in San Francisco. There were laws that prevented Chinese Americans from participating in the laundry business. I'm in California. California, of course, rounded up Japanese Americans during World War II. There were laws that prevented Japanese Americans from owning farmland. The average Japanese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. The average Chinese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. How does that happen? It happens because of a strong belief in family. It is rare for a Chinese American or a Japanese American kid to have a child outside of wedlock. and a strong belief in education and a strong belief in entrepreneurship. These are the kinds of qualities that make people successful.
You can't blame everything on having a fatherless family, right? Because
I didn't say blaming everything.
I know, but that's what you're saying. You're saying a strong community. But
no, you said that's what I just said. I didn't say that.
You talk about the Asian community. Asian community, it's easy for them to get loans for entrepreneurships. It's easy for them to get loans for houses. You look at our community.
Okay.
If you really want to talk about our community, right? You look at the schools in our community. Some of our schools are the worst, right? Would you agree with that? Yes or no?
Absolutely. Which is
right?
why one of the reasons I'm running for president is for school choice.
Also, would you say that in our community is
systemic?
It's also in our communities heavy food deserts. There's nothing but fast food places that are just killing and destroying that. Would you say that's true?
Systemic too.
Boy.
Would you say that's true? I'm just asking a question.
Okay, you said a number of things. I just addressed one of them about loans. Mm-hmm. In 1965, Barack Obama, who was in private practice, joined a bunch of other lawyers to file a class action lawsuit against Citicorp, which is headquartered here in New York. 186 black people were applying for loans for mortgages and didn't get them. And they accused Citicorp of engaging in racism. Mm-hmm. Citicorp said, no, it's not racism. You have poor credit scores, and we want to make sure we get our money back. Obama joined a bunch of other lawyers, and they sued Citicorp in a class action lawsuit. And Citicorp said, okay, to hell with it. Gave them all loans. And they followed them all up. Daily Caller did a few years later. Almost all of them lost their homes. Several of them filed for bankruptcy. One of them even said, when you don't qualify for a loan, maybe we shouldn't get a loan. Well, duh. It wasn't true that black people were not getting loans. Plus, there are all sorts of black-owned community banks around the country, and it turns out the turn-down rate when you apply for a loan at a community bank was even higher because they had less capital and they couldn't afford to loan money to risky people. It is just not the case that the reason for the plight of the black community is because people were not lending money to them. It's just not true.
That's not true, but
So I have a background in real estate sales. And so during that time about the mortgages, we were selling properties, new construction. We were selling them like hotcakes. Everybody was buying one. Everybody had a loan. Everybody was buying these properties. We were making money, hand over fist. Oh my God, it was a good time. It was a good time, I tell you. For those couple of years, it was great. It was great being in the business because we were selling $400,000 new construction properties in the hood. $400,000 in the hood. I said, oh my God, what is happening? It was wonderful. Well, these people didn't qualify. They barely had a good job to carry the loan. They had no money. It was like no down payments or whatever. I forget how it all went. No down payment or FHA loan 3% and all that. All you had to come up with $5,000 and you'll get yourself a brand new house. And that was the deal. That was happening in and out. We were selling houses like you wouldn't believe. And then fast forward 2 years later, those same houses were underwater. And the people could not afford them. That's when we fell into the short sale market where people could not afford to pay the banks and the banks wanted their houses back. And so people were just letting the houses go. Okay, because why? Because Obama decided that everybody should get a house. And so the bank said, you know what, to hell with it. We'll give them all houses. Let's see how that works. And so they did. And the market crashed because of it. So another wonderful gift from Barack Hussein Obama.
Hold on 1 second, Charlamagne.
What's not true?
You're bringing back facts of 1965, right? Let's talk 2023, right?
I said 1995.
1995. We'll talk 2023, right? My son will be successful in real estate and successful in buying a house. You know why? Because his father owns a house. Because his father owns a house, right? But my father
because of you and the drive you put into him.
Did not own houses.
Because of you and the drive you put into him.
We're not going to have a conversation.
You're not even appreciating what you've done to your son.
I'm just asking you a question. I just let you speak and I'll let you talk.
Okay.
We have a conversation. All right. When we talk about it, right, it's harder for our community to get loans, right? And not just because of poor credit scores. It's because of where the areas are. You talked about the Asian community. A lot of the Asian community have their own banks and they're able to process and get their own banks. There's not too many African American branches that are able to give out money. So that's one. Then let's talk about getting grants for schools. They're not even giving grants for schools at the rate that they're giving grants for white people. And let's talk about when they talk about entrepreneurship. They are giving so much money to these white and Asian kids and Asian people doing it, and a 1,000 times less than our community. Will you agree to any of that?
No, I don't. I don't agree with virtually any of what you just now said. The turn down rate for a white applicant for a mortgage is higher than the turn down rate for a Japanese or a Chinese applicant for a mortgage. Now, are you telling me that banks are discriminating against whites in favor of Asian Americans? It's because their credit scores are better. They often live below their means. They save more, even when they're making the same amount of money than black people do. If you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. Period. End of statement. Even the head of Urban League, a black man once said that if you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. End of statement.
Sir.
Before the pit bull comes on, I want to make this point. Larry Elder said a very good thing there. He said the Asians, they save their money. They are not out here buying fancy cars. They're not out here buying sneakers. They're not out here buying, whatever it is that black folks spend their money on, for show. Well, one of the things that we know they spend their money on for show is these grills, gold caps. They got gold all up in their teeth. I mean, it's caps. They spend money on that. They spend money on useless things. But the Asians, they save their money. Why? Because they want to have better houses. They want to be able to educate their children. They want to have nice things and have nice, memories and things like that. So they invest in vacations and, nice things. Where the black man, they don't do that. They invest in things that's non-essential, and things, in shoe collections and so on and so forth. So the Asians use their money because they want to buy houses. They save their money so they could buy houses, and they can, have those investments in art and so on. The black man, that's not what they're doing. And so when it comes down to buying a house, the Asians is going to have better credit score. And they're going to have, they're going to have a down payment. And the black man, he going to show up with his grill and say, can I get a loan? Can I get a loan? Can I get a loan? I'm paid with my grill. I'm paid with my grill. Just saying.
Yes. Let's just, okay. When you were talking about crime, you weren't prepared to talk about disproportion. You talked about how it was more black people that was doing it, and then you talked about how we're the smaller, of the population. The same applies also to the loans. It's more white people than it is black people. You seem to pick and choose.
I'm talking about the rate. I'm talking about the rate.
Whatever it is, the bottom line is it's more white people than it is black people. And so if more black people are not getting loans disproportionately, it seems you only want to apply the disproportion to the conversation when it benefits your talking point.
I'm not sure you understood.
Which is why they say.
I'm not sure you understood. I'm not sure you understood my point. That's why I mentioned in 1995 when 186 black people who were not getting loans filed a class action lawsuit claiming that they were denied the loan because of racism. Citicorp said, okay, here are your loans. The reason I wasn't giving you the loans is because we're afraid you weren't going to be able to pay them back.
I'm not talking about
Fast forward, they weren't able to pay them back, which proves the Citicorp point.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about
I know you're not. Because inconvenient.
I'm talking about your response to Envy when he said.
Thank you all for watching and sharing the content. I really do appreciate it. Now we're going to have a word from the sponsor of this video, Mammoth Nation. Thank you so much. Save America, save our values, save our traditions. Stop using woke platforms to spend your money. Stop. This episode of The Conservative Poet is brought to you by Mammoth Nation. Mammoth Nation is a conservative marketplace where you, the patriot, can go and purchase the items that you need. Mammoth Nation is an online subscription-based platform. So you have to be subscribed in order to get all the wonderful discounts. You can get up to 70% discounts on so many of the stores. They have phone services, services for food, traveling, hotel. They refuse to let anti-American companies join their platforms. The vendors have been carefully vetted and have been approved a conservative American values, which is one of the reasons we have partnered, because I do love what they offer. I love that they are offering opportunities to American um, vendors and American creators as well. So we are trying to put America first here. And that's one of the things we do on this channel. And so I support Mammoth Nation and what they do to put conservative American businesses first. So visit Mammoth Nation today so you can get the discounts that you deserve with American made products. So use code AmaniaS, that's AMANIAS. Again, that's AmaniaS for your discounts today on these amazing opportunities.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Elder. Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and I'm pretty sure everybody who just caught a RICO with him in Georgia, they all had fathers, and they still ended up in jail. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody said if you have a father, you won't go to jail. Nobody said if you didn't have a father, you are going to jail. My father never.
But guess what you did say, Mr. Elder? I'm sorry, respectfully.
May I answer this question?
Guess what you did say.
May I answer this question?
Let him finish this statement, Ted.
Okay.
My father never knew his biological father. He got thrown out of the house when he was 13 years old, 8th grade dropout, Jim Crow South, Athens, Georgia. Fast forward, my dad cleaned toilets, 2 full-time jobs cleaning toilets when I was growing up. Went to night school to get his GED, and then after that, he went to night school to learn how to operate a small restaurant. Age of 47, my dad saved his nickels and dimes from his job, starts a small restaurant near downtown LA. Fast forward, he retires in his 80s. He owned that restaurant. He owned property next door, plus the house that's still in our family. Not too shabby for somebody who did not know his biological father. It's not a death sentence. You still have choices. It's just much more difficult to raise a child on your own. Even Tupac Shakur said, I know for a fact... Tupac, excuse me. I know for a fact, had I had a father, I would have been more confident. I would have been more disciplined. End of quote.
Well, how did all those white men end up in jail when they still had fathers? The Trumps and the Giuliani. I'm just asking the question. How did they end up in jail?
Because some people commit crimes.
No, sir. Stop. My apologies for interrupting you earlier. I just couldn't stomach the answer that I knew you were going to say.
Couldn't stomach the answer?
Yeah, I couldn't stomach because your actual answer to Trump being what was happening to him with the indictments, you actually said that the system was doing it. You said there was a 2-tier system. This is your words.
That's right.
That it was a 2-tier system. So when it came to Trump, all of a sudden you now believe in this systematic thing that's happening to Trump. But then when it happens to black people,
but it's not about race. It's not about race. I didn't
ask you that. I asked you. Remember, I made it easy for you, and I took race out of it. Remember, I said I'm just talking about the system. I'm just talking about the system.
If you want to ask me whether I believe Donald Trump is being treated the same way as Joe Biden and is being treated the same way as Hillary Clinton, all these people are white. All these people are white. There's a double standard.
Well,
Mr. Elder, you didn't hear my question.
You said that
you didn't hear my question.
You said some people commit crimes, so you do believe that Trump, Giuliani, they committed a crime.
I don't know.
But you just said some people commit crimes.
I said some people committed a crime. I didn't say Donald Trump committed a crime. You asked me specifically whether I believe Donald Trump committed a crime. I don't.
Specifically about those people and why they ended up in jail. They all got fathers.
Well, Donald Trump is not in jail.
Oh, he got indicted.
Yeah, he got indicted. That's a far cry from being in jail.
Why did he get indicted?
Well, he got arrested, is what I'm saying.
He's
going to get arrested.
He got indicted, in my opinion, because the DOJ has a double standard. They let Hillary pass, for example. She clearly violated the Espionage Act by having an unsecured server in her basement. She paid for the Steele dossier. She destroyed 30,000 emails that were under subpoena, and she got a wrist slap. And Donald Trump is now being indicted, I think, for the 4th time. It's unfair.
Right.
Black people have been telling y'all how corrupt the FBI is for a long time.
And the FBI has been corrupt. There was COINTEL, the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover also wiretapped MLK under Robert Kennedy, a Democrat Attorney General, Malcolm X, lots of things. Right. And I find it interesting how the same people who criticize the FBI historically are now defending the FBI because they're going after Donald Trump.
Oh, we're not defending the FBI.
I didn't say you were. I said some of the same people.
We're just looking and saying, damn, finally.
What's your thoughts with Florida? And you see that they're trying to take our history out of these history.
I tell you, these people are stuck on stupid. They come up with the most stupidest questions, and they're all there to back each other up with their stupid, dumb questions. I mean, these people are so ridiculous. This man come on here to have a conversation, and he can't even have a conversation. He's got knowledge to give to them. He's giving them stats. He's giving them numbers. He's giving them everything that, information. But they don't want to have a conversation. They want to just push back, push their narrative, push their thoughts, push whatever it is that they need to push, and not hear him. This is a man running for the office of presidency. A black man, not an Indian. Like Vivek Ramaswamy, where they were racist towards him because he was Indian. But this is a black man just like you. And you still have disdain in your tongue for him. You still have disdain in your eyes for him. Disdain in your conversation. Disdain in your manner. Disdain in your welcome. Disdain in your whole setup with this black man. It is disgraceful. These people have 5.38 million subscribers to their channel, and they are feeding these people this nonsense. And if these people are low IQ, which I'm guessing they might be because they listen to this nonsense, then they are feeding and breeding all this crap into these people. And I hope that some of them have some sense and say, you know what, Breakfast Club, y'all did this to Vivek Ramaswamy, that Indian, and now y'all doing this to this here black man. This black man who's an author, who ran for governor of California, who has a star on the Hollywood Boulevard, who is a radio personality for 40 years, who has businesses and put people to work. Y'all treating him like that? Gosh, man. 5.38 million subscribers is how much the Breakfast Club has. Gosh, I hope those numbers start to dwindle away because people are going to be fed up with this nonsense. Okay? People are fed up. I'm hoping these black people's eyes are opening up to you and your nonsense, and they will start to pull away from this garbage. Had to get that off my chest. Just saying.
History books and not trying to teach our history. What's your thoughts?
I find it interesting that the Democrats are the ones complaining about Florida. This is the party of slavery, party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK, the party of the Southern Manifesto, the party of Dred Scott, the party that I said earlier destroyed the nuclear intact family, and the party that is opposing school choice. And now they want to lecture Florida on making sure the proper history of slavery is taught. I don't know anybody who's defending slavery. Anybody. Not Ron DeSantis. He's not defending.
People benefited from slavery.
Actually, you're talking about one line. You're talking about one line in about 127 pages of the study, and it is a line that was repeated almost verbatim in the associated in the advanced placement African American course that the DeSantis administration refused to use because of all the sexual stuff that was in it. It's basically the same thing that was in the advanced placement African American courses, and now because it's in that, all of a sudden the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
What did you think about that?
Well, sir, you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two very different things. Slavery, unfortunately.
That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that was a defense on those who were asking.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense. Unfortunately, slavery has been part and parcel of human history from the very beginning. Asians enslaved Asians, whites enslaved whites, blacks enslaved blacks, Native Americans enslaved Native Americans. This is a culture, the Western civilization, that had a revulsion against it. We had a civil war against it. And we ought to applaud ourselves for doing something about this. This is a flawed country. It's moving forward. It's becoming more perfect all the time. Today, if you are born and raised in America, if you finish high school, presumably one where you can read, write, and compute at grade level, which is why I support school choice, don't have a kid before you're 20, get married first, get a job, keep a job, don't quit it until you get another job, and avoid the criminal justice system, you will not be poor. And if you don't follow that formula, there's a good chance you will be.
Do you think slavery was self-inflicted? Or do you think Jim Crow segregation was self-inflicted? Or do you think,
Slavery was self-inflicted. Of course, it wasn't self-inflicted, but there are a lot of people have bloody hands in slavery. Mm-hmm. For example, slavery could not have existed had it not been for African chieftains who were selling black slaves captured in battle or captured through raids and selling them to European and Arab slavers. It could not have existed without that. So everybody has dirty hands here. That's why reparations is such a foolish thing. If you're going to get reparations from the 5% or so of white people that have some sort of generational connection to slavery, and that's all there is, then you need to go back to Africa and get money from African countries that were involved in the slave trade and in the Arab slave trade. And by the way, the Arab slave trade was even worse than the European slave trade. 90% rate of attrition, often making men and women walk on barefoot across the Sahara, and the men were castrated. Only about five.
So if they go after the money from the other countries, then would you agree that it would be okay to go after the money from America? Is that your problem?
When are you going to stop with this? Everybody has a grievance.
I just asked a simple question.
I'm answering your question. There's no end. There'll be no end to this because slavery has been part of human history from the very beginning.
Okay, now I've let you talk. Sir, I've let you talk. And every time I talk, you begin to talk and then you say, let you finish. So I asked you a very simple question. You said, if you're going to go after it in America, go after it in Africa. So if we all agree to go after it in Africa, will you then agree to go after it in America? It's just a simple question.
No, I won't because it's a waste of time. We ought to be spending our time on education.
Next question.
Okay. You told me that I cut you off. Then I tried to answer your question. You won't let me finish.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. It's a waste of time. We ought to be talking about working hard, investing in ourselves. Right now, as we speak, there are Haitians in Haiti lining up for a lottery to come into this country. Why? Because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You can go from nothing to something faster in America than any other country in all of human history. We ought to be talking about, let me just, one more point, 1997, Time Magazine and CNN hooked up together to do a poll on what black teenagers and white teenagers felt about racism. Mm-hmm. And both of them were asked, is racism a major problem in America? Both of them said yes. But then Time and CNN asked this question of the black teenagers. Is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? This is 1997. 89% of them said small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many blacks said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism.
That was 1997.
1997. Look it up.
It's 2023, though.
You think America is more racist now after the election and re-election of Barack Obama than it was in 1997?
Yes, because of the election of MAGA, Donald Trump, 100%. Yes.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, how is it, Charlemagne, that Donald Trump got 8% of the black vote in 2016? He got 12% in 2020, a 50% increase. He got 20% of the black male vote in 2020. If MAGA is racist, how do you explain that Donald Trump substantially increased the percentage of black votes the Republican Party got?
Sometimes people make poor
So why are you
choices.
running against Trump then, Mr. Elder?
Yes,
I'm not running against him. I'm running against Biden Harris. Any one of the Republican nominees we have would be better than what we have right now. I'm not running against him. I'm running to put forth the issues I just now mentioned that I've been talking about for the last few minutes.
I want to ask you about that. After 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges, don't you think it would behoove the Republican Party to move on from Donald Trump?
I think that the voters in the primary will make that decision.
What do you think, though?
I have no problem with I thought Donald Trump did an extraordinary job as president, especially for black people. Best economy ever. He did something about the borders. The people that are most hurt because of porous borders are black people living in the inner city, because most of the illegal aliens have little or no education. They end up living in the inner city. They compete against black people with high school or less for jobs. Mm-hmm. There are about 1 million fewer black people working than who would otherwise be working if it weren't for illegal alien labor. And illegal alien labor, according to a study done by the Civil Rights Commission, puts downward pressure to the tune of almost $2,000 per year on the salaries of black people living in the inner city. And Donald Trump gave us the most secure border we ever had. He also supported school choice. He also did the First Step Act, which allowed about 5,000 mostly black men with long criminal sentences, nonviolent, to have their sentences reduced an average of 70 months per. He pardoned Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion. Even Barack Obama didn't do that.
And the layout, how Larry Elder just laid it out beautifully. Some of the things that President Trump did for the country, but black people mostly were the ones who benefited from that. President Trump closed the border, built the wall. That helped black people. The First Step Act, that helped black people. All of these things, opportunity zones, that helped black people. All of these things helped blacks. But Charlemagne the God, that just went in one ear and slipped out the other because they don't care about what Trump did for the black people. They just trying to push their narrative through.
President Biden had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. President Obama had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. Y'all would be telling them that they need to step aside and they shouldn't be running for president.
Well, I wouldn't vote for Barack Obama or for Joe Biden in any case, no matter whether he had indictments or no indictments. I don't vote for tax spend, regulate liberals.
You're a conservative, right? Obviously.
No question.
What initially made you gravitate towards being a conservative?
I think it was my father. My father was a lifelong Republican, and my father always told my brothers and me the following. Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you try to get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. And my dad, I told you about his background. He told my brothers and me that hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, Larry, but you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you moan or groan about what somebody did or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, Charlemagne, my dad, told my brothers and me this. No matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad stuff is going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I wrote a book about my father's life. It's called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. It's about an 8-hour conversation he and I had, where at the beginning of the conversation, I thought my dad was harsh. I thought he spanked us too often. We had a belt. In those days, from the South, you spank kids. And I thought my dad was way too harsh. And we had an 8-hour conversation. And by the time we ended, my dad got bigger and bigger and bigger, and Larry Elder got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I apologized to him. And it's a book that changed a lot of people's lives. It's called, as I said, Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. The paperback is called A Lot Like Me. Same book, but it's cheaper.
Can you honestly say this is the Republican Party that you...
That man just went over a most beautiful, beautiful experience with his father. And that just kind of went over Charlemagne the God's head. I would say, Charlemagne, if you're getting any value out of this conversation, this man just told you how he and his father connected and how he became smaller because he realized that his father was doing the best that he could, that his father was guiding him and making him strong so he could be able to come out here in the society and be a man and be the great man that he has turned out to be. And he told you he wrote a book about this. Wouldn't you? I would just to say, oh wow, Larry Elder, that's a wonderful. Where can people grab your book? Oh, LarryElder.com. Oh, that's a wonderful. Larry, I read that book myself, and after I read it, I called on my father, or I reconnected with the men in my life and said, hey, look at this story of this black man. Look at how his life has turned out. I would think you would just make acknowledge of the beautiful story that Larry Elder just laid out there, but goes over his black bald head.
You grew up on? Just modern day GOP?
Yes. The Republican Party pretty much has always stood for low taxes, low regulation, peace through strength, not strength through peace, and strong borders, and still does. And when Donald Trump is gone, and he will be gone, even if he gets reelected, day after he gets reelected, he's a lame duck, the party will still go on. The principles will still go on. However, I do believe that many people in our party have spent and spent and spent so that Ronald Reagan, my favorite president, when he entered the Oval Office, Charlemagne, when he left, the government was bigger. It got bigger under George Herbert Walker Bush. It got bigger under W. It got bigger under Donald Trump. And the only way to restrain spending is with an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP, with exception for war and for natural disaster. Otherwise, we're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Let me use the word unsustainable. Mm-hmm. That's the word Barack Obama used to describe the so-called entitlements. Unsustainable was a word that Bill Clinton used to describe them. But nothing happens because if you run claiming you're going to reform Social Security or Medicare, the other side is going to accuse you of not caring about the sick, the poor, the elderly, and you are going to lose elections. That's why government gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need a law to restrain spending. Otherwise, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for young people like you, these programs are not going to be there.
Mr. Elder, I know a lot of Black conservatives, and I completely agree about the Black family. I don't think anybody here objects to that.
Don't disagree about that at all.
I think when you talk about ideology and then you mix in parties and then personalities, it gets kind of confusing. And, you mentioned yourself not to moan and groan, that as long as you work hard, all is well. And I think where the conflict is coming in is you did moan and groan about how the Republicans treated you. You did moan and groan about Governor Newsom and, asking for a recall. You did not leave that up to the voters. You are moaning and groaning when it comes to Donald Trump Trump and how he's being treated. So it just seems to be a hypocrisy. And I don't know if the message would land a little bit better if there was some fairness across the board on Democrats and Republicans. I'm an independent, by the way, and I think both parties are trash. And I think all of us here, see both sides. And that's the part that's just not landing for me. There seems to be an unfairness on both sides with you.
Well, not.
Before he goes on, there is nothing wrong with seeing something and speaking up about it. Nobody's moaning and groaning or bitching about anything. There are policies in place. There are ways to do things. And so for people to stand up and say, you know what, this was wrong, and I want that to be acknowledged, like the 2020 election was stolen. We want to talk about that. Gavin Newsom, the recall. Yeah, I think that was stolen too from Larry Elder. And he had every right to do a recall. But you're saying it's like, well, if you stand up and speak about something, then you're moaning and groaning and bitching and whining. No, that's not what he's doing. You know who was moaning and groaning, bitching and whining? Hillary Clinton, when she lost the election in 2016, and she's been moaning and groaning, and it's now 2023, and she's still bitching and whining about it. If you want to know who's moaning and groaning, call up your girl, Hillary.
Not too surprisingly, I don't agree with your analysis. How is it that I did not leave the recall to the voters? What do you mean by that?
What do you?
You said I didn't leave the recall to the voters.
No. I said you moaned and groaned about it. You said it should be recalled, correct? Correct?
I said Gavin Newsom should have been recalled, yes.
Right, that's moaning and groaning.
Well, actually, it's taking advantage of what's in the California Constitution, which is when a certain percentage of voters sign a petition to recall a politician, there can be a recall vote, and there was one, as there was in 2003. We recalled the governor then, and there was in 2021 when I attempted to recall Gavin Newsom. That's part of our democratic process in California.
Absolutely. We agree with that. I'm going to your statement when you said rather than moan about it. A little while ago, you said rather than moan about it, I'm just going to keep doing the hard work. And so I'm just saying that technically is moaning about it because the governor's decided. That's my point, sir.
I don't follow exactly what you're saying. I really don't.
It's okay. I didn't expect you to.
Yeah,
but
I'm a little slow sometimes.
One moment, yeah, we get it. Yeah. One moment you're complaining about the system, and the next minute you're saying the system is fair. The next minute you're saying it's not fair. So that's what I'm saying. There just seems to be a double standard on you and the system, not wanting to be accountable for a system that Black people are not in charge of, by the way. Of not wanting to hold both sides accountable when it comes to the system.
Do I believe Hillary was treated differently and Joe Biden treated differently than Donald Trump is being treated? Yes, I do. Is that an indictment about whether or not America is systemically racist? No, it is not. Those are
they're two totally different things.
Yes,
you're trying to merge the two, but they're two totally different things.
I agree with you. They're two different things. We're agreeing. We're agreeing. They're two different things. We're agreeing.
No, we're agreeing the two different things. We're not agreeing that there's not systematic racism because we're not in charge of the system, sir. In case you
all right. Can we?
Black people have never been in charge of any system.
Well, actually, we have been. Take Baltimore.
No, we've never been in charge of any. No, tell me, what financial system are Black people in charge of? What healthcare system are Black people in charge of? What government system are Black people in charge of?
I'm about ready to tell you.
What prison system are Black people in charge?
I'm about ready to tell you.
I'm not talking about mayors. I already know that talking point, sir. I go on Fox News all the time as well. So let's not go there with that. I said, what system have we created? Goodness. Have we implemented that we have been in charge of? Name one.
Is this why you don't like talking to Black women, Larry Elder?
Wow. Baltimore. A few years ago.
No. That's mayors. I'm not talking. I said system.
I'm going to tell you about this system if you allow me to finish my point.
I'm not talking about somebody elected and doing a job, sir. I asked what system did we create? What financial system?
Okay, let's talk about the system of one of the largest.
Let him say his point,
thank you. One of the systems of one of the largest cities in America, Baltimore. Freddie Gray died in police custody a few years ago. The mayor was Black. The head of the police department was Black. Number two.
It's not in charge of the system, but go ahead.
Number two person in charge of the police department was Black. All of city council, Democrats, majority Black.
Still not in charge of the system.
Wow. Six officers charged, 3 of them were Black. A judge before whom 2 of the officers tried their case, found him not guilty, was Black.
Still not in charge of the system.
The city intendant of public schools was Black. The county superintendent of public schools was Black. The attorney general at the time, Loretta Lynch, is Black, as was the president of the United States, was Black. And yet,
still not in charge of the system. So I asked you a simple question, sir.
Well, Wanda Sykes said when Barack Obama got elected, "How are you going to complain about the man when you are the man?" Now, from the president to the attorney general to the state attorney to the mayor to the head of the police department to the commissions of the schools in the city and in the county to the majority of city council in that city, all of them are black. And you're still saying that we don't run anything?
So who's in charge of the
No,
system,
no,
Ted?
no. I said who created the system. I didn't say we didn't run anything. I challenged a lot of those black leaders, by the way. I said who, when we talk about the system, what black people have been in charge of any system. I'm not talking about a position. I'm not talking about a mayor. You know good
So
well
you're basically saying that they're black faces that are still in those
Correct.
positions, but they're still being a
correct.
part
Similar
of the
to
system.
you, Mr. Elder. You're a black face in a position in the conservative movement. They're just the same. They're just on the other side.
I am without words for this person. She just said you're a blackface in the system. Elder, you're a blackface in the system. I mean, the gall, the nerve. I was going to say, how can this person even have a job? But I get it now. This is her job. This is what they pay her to do. They pay her to be the bulldog, the pit bull. This is what they pay her for. My God. What a disrespectful human being. Unbelievable. You're the blackface in the system for shizzle.
I'm talking about
So then when Martin Luther King said in 1966, I believe there could be a black president in about 40 years' time, then it really doesn't matter whether there's one or isn't. Nothing changes. He was naive.
The
He was
system also
naive then.
killed him as well. Well, we know that the FBI and the CIA also killed him. That system. You realize that, correct?
You realize that. You realize that.
An individual killed him.
Right. That was also a part of Pro Hotel through the system.
COINTELPRO,
correct?
yeah.
Not correct.
COINTELPRO.
Not correct. He was
So
killed.
the FBI didn't have anything to do with it. The CIA didn't have anything to do with
J. Edgar
it.
Hoover was definitely on Martin's ass. Like, come on.
I didn't say he wasn't.
Oh.
Robert Kennedy is the one that approved the wiretaps. But to say that the FBI killed him, I mean, what's your evidence of that?
Oh, no,
that's a pretty serious charge.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Pretty serious charge.
Yeah.
Serious charges
Yeah, I
require
was talking
serious
about the
evidence.
Yeah.
What is your
Mr.
enforcement
Elder,
law proposal?
It is to allow states to set up commissions of retired judges and retired DAs to get rid of these soft on crime George Soros-backed DAs that are allowing a bunch of bad people on the streets or not charging bad people to the full extent of the law. And the people that, by and large, that are hurt by these people are the very black and brown people living in the inner city. There's a...
It's like Charlamagne never heard of such a thing. What you talking about, Willis? What you mean? DA soft on crime. I don't know nothing about that. I walk over the homeless when I'm in New York City because he lives in New York City. I'm sure they see what's happening in New York City. They see the crime. You know, you get mugged on the train. I don't see none of that. What you talking about, Willis? Soft on crime. What you talking about? There ain't no crime happening in New York City, man. Ain't no crime happening. We's good out there. We just got to keep walking over the illegals. But ain't no crime.
About that. A lot of people, of course, make mistakes, yes.
Okay.
And I think that people should deal with the consequences of their actions. And if you let people know there are consequences to their actions, it will inform their actions and make them behave more responsibly. Anytime you allow bad behavior to continue, you're going to get more bad behavior, whether that's...
So how does that apply to President Trump then? Because you said that was a two-tier system that
Because
that's unfair.
I don't believe Donald Trump...
You don't think he did anything?
I don't think he did anything wrong. No, I don't. I believe that he complained about the election the same way Hillary did. Hillary, for 4 years, referred to the 2016 election as having been stolen, her word, not mine. She called Donald Trump illegitimate, her word, not mine. Jay Johnson, who's Obama's DHS secretary, testified under oath that not a single vote tally was changed by the Russians. They tried, but they failed to change a single vote tally. 66% of Democrats believe the Russians changed vote tallies to get Donald Trump elected, even though Jay Johnson testified under oath, not a single one was changed. That's the damage that people like Hillary and former President Jimmy Carter and Stacey Abrams and Hakeem Jeffries and others have said for years, referring to Donald Trump as illegitimate. A greater percentage of Democrats believe 2016 was stolen than we feel that way about 2020, but yet nobody calls them election deniers and nobody accuses them of undermining our republic. And they're not undermining our republic. They're complaining about an election. You have a right to do so.
I know you probably got to go. Have you ever heard the term nigga wake up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever
Well,
had
I'm acutely aware, Charlamagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, It seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
Hold on. I love this piece right here. Charlemagne the God, you pose a question. When it happened to you, people saw it. Joe Biden, in your house, to your face, told you, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. If you don't vote for me, you ain't got no brain. If you don't vote for me, then you don't know what you're doing. If you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. He told you that to your face, black man. Joe Biden, white supremacist, old man, 1994 crime bill. He told you to your face that you ain't black. That was a nigger wake-up call.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a nigger wake-up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney. Because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seemed to me that should have been a nigger wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, no, for the record, I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
I didn't say you were.
Yeah, I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you what your party affiliation.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but you are black. And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say think a certain kind of way, otherwise you, quote, ain't black. Wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What I just now said, how dare you insult me and tell me I think as a human being, let alone as a black person? I don't tell you how to think, Joe Biden. How dare you come in here and tell me how I should think? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump if I want to vote for Donald Trump. And if I want to vote for Donald Trump, it does not make me not black. 20% of black people, black men, as I said, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Are they not black now? So only 80% of black men walking around are really black, 20% are not because they voted for Donald Trump. How insulting is that? How condescending is that?
I mean, you're probably right, but I didn't take it in that way.
Well, I did.
As I said to him in that moment, it's just about me wanting something for my people, and I want to know what is he going to do for my people, and not only for my people now, how are you going to atone for the things you've done to my people?
Right.
That's it.
Right. And this is a guy, Joe Biden, who, when he first got into the Senate, hung out with segregationists, talked about how well he got along with them, talked about how he didn't want integration because of the jungle. This guy has made all sorts of insulting things to black people, and his policies right now are hurting black people. Inflation hurts the people at the bottom more than anything else. Letting a bunch of illegal aliens into the border are hurting black people more than anybody else, as I said earlier. He opposes school choice when he has his own kids in private school, and we lost a year, almost 2 years of in-school education in California because of COVID that he supported. I mean, this guy has done monstrous things to black people, and then for him to come in here and tell you how you ought to think as a black person, that blew my mind.
As a person objectively who doesn't care about either party, when I just take a step back and I just look at everything that's happening, I see one party that seems still committed to democracy somewhat, and one party who's headed fast towards fascism.
So, Charlemagne the God has had himself told what to do by not just Joe Biden, but also Kamala. There was an interview that he did with Kamala, and she was asking him about, who the real president, and she put him in his place. You don't come out of your space and talk to us don't you ask us questions like that. Sit your ass down, pretty much is what she said. She said, you don't ask. You sound like a Republican. You sound like a Republican asking us who the real president. Yeah, she told you to sit down and shut up. And Joe Biden told you, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black because you ain't got no brain. They both told you, we're going to tell you what to do. We're going to tell you how to think. Your black vice president and your great daddy Biden. Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion. So who do you think I would vote for?
Well. Let's talk about fascism, since I assume you're talking about election denying. In 2000, when George W. Bush won the election over Al Gore, the Democrats, the first week of January 2001, tried to overturn the results in Florida. 2004, George W. Bush gets reelected. Democrats, including Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th committee, Jamie Raskin, a member of the January 6th committee, joined with 28 other House Democrats and Senator Barbara Boxer to overturn the results in Ohio, claiming without any evidence that the Debo voting machine had been hacked. 2016, January 2017, Democrats challenged more states trying to get the election overturned that elected Donald Trump. Then Donald Trump challenged the first week of January in 2021. Nobody accused them of undermining our republic. Nobody accused them of being fascists. They exercised whatever means they could to try to win the election. I want to remind you that Hillary Clinton advised Joe Biden during the 2020 election, if it is a close election, quote, do not concede under any circumstances, close quote. Donald Trump used whatever legal means he could, advancing some novel legal theories to try to stay in office, and he failed. But I don't blame him for trying.
Yeah, but it's not just election denying. It's the disdain of women and fear of non-standard gender identities and sexual orientation.
Disdain for women.
It's the galvanizing of popular rage against cultural elites. It's nationalism based on dominant, superior race and historic bloodlines. Like, there's a lot of things that Republicans are doing.
Well, what about Joe Biden going to Howard University, as he did recently, giving a commencement speech, Charlemagne, and he said the number one threat to the homeland was white supremacy. Really? The
FBI said that.
The Anti-Defamation League keeps track of how many people are killed by extremists, no matter the race of the extremists, every year. Last year, there were 25. As I said, in 2020, there were 11,000 blacks who were murdered, almost all murdered by other people, not murdered by white extremists. It's a lie to say white extremists is a big problem in America. It's a lie. It's what Democrats do to get black people angry.
The FBI said that.
It's what Democrats... Fine. I don't agree with that. The number one threat to the homeland is a large number of people who are engaging in criminal activity. And what Democrats do is tell black people racism, racism, racism. They trot out David Duke or some other facsimile every 4 years to tell black people, vote for us because, after all, we're the party of racial justice, social justice, and equity. And these dastardly people over there, these Republicans, are the party of Jim Crow and slavery, even though it was the Democratic Party that was the party of Jim Crow and slavery.
So why should black people rock with the GOP then? Like, what are the reasons?
Economics. I had Tavis Smiley and Cornel West on my radio show once, Charlemagne. And I told Tavis and Cornel West that under Ronald Reagan, black adult unemployment fell faster than white adult unemployment. Black Hispanic unemployment fell faster than did white unemployment. Black teenage unemployment fell faster than did white teenage unemployment. Black businesses were created at a rate faster. Their revenues grew at a rate faster. And they both told me that I was wrong and that they would have the data on my desk by Monday. That was 15 years ago. I know the mail is slow, but it seems to me they should have given it to me by now. Again, Donald Trump presided over the best economy ever for black people, lowest unemployment. And it seems to me the number one reason that most people vote is because of the economy. We have had 40-year historic high in inflation. We've had gas prices that are now about 40% more than what they were when Joe Biden came into office. And we have about 7 million illegal aliens in our country. And the bulk of the suffering because of these illegal aliens will be borne by black people living in the inner city. Those are three reasons alone not to vote for the Democratic Party and to vote for the Republican Party. And by the way, I'm not voting for a fishing buddy. It's not because I like Trump or like him personally. I'm voting for policies. And I don't really care whether or not his personality offends people and he does bad tweets. Maybe it might be better for our society if he were more polite. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not voting for a fishing buddy. I'm voting for somebody to keep taxes low, keep regulations low, to secure the borders and keep us out of unnecessary wars.
Would it be fun to have money in a fascist country, though? To be black and have money in a fascist country? Or to be anything other than
I don't agree this is a fascist country. It's always better to have money than not to have money.
Well, I just a simple question. Have the Republicans done anything that you disagree with, just out of curiosity?
They spend too much. I think taxes are still too high. I think that there are a lot of Republicans that support things like minimum wages. And by the way, Milton Friedman, one of my favorite economists, said the minimum wage is perhaps the most anti-black law in the statute books, close quote. At one time, a black teenager was more likely to have a job than a white teenager until the minimum wage came along and kicked it up and up and up. So there are policies that the Republican Party supports, like minimum wage. Some of them do that I don't like. Also kinds of licensing, unnecessary licensing. I was at an Apple store a few years ago, and this black woman waited on me, and she was very sharp technically. I'm not very technically sharp, and I was very impressed. And I said, "Have you always been technically sharp?" She goes, "Well, I'm not really. I'm just here because I want to earn enough money to get a license to cut hair." I said, "Black hair?" She said, "Yes." I said, "You don't know how to cut black hair already? I have black barbers in my family. Everybody learned how to cut hair on their own." She said, "Well, in California, you have to have a license to get. You have to have a license to open up a shop to cut hair." I said, "How much does it cost?" She said, $5,000. I said, "You need to get a $5,000 license to learn how to do something you already know how to do? What is that?" So a lot of the rules and regulations. Okay, fair.
It's hard to get around the system, no matter how hard you work.
But the system applies to both blacks and whites too. But fair enough, those systems ought to be struck down. So there are lots of things Republicans do that I don't.
Well, it's not just cutting hair. You know that. You know they have to train how to learn with diseases and to make sure your clippers are clean and make sure certain things that you have to follow certain protocols so that you can be a barber, so that you can make sure that the community is safe when you're doing these protocols.
Well, if there weren't government protocols, there'd be other protocols. For example, there's something called the Consumer Reports. That's not government, and it comes out and it talks about cars and what cars are good, cars are safe. If government didn't do these kinds of things, entrepreneurs would step in and they would have licensing. So there'd be a little sticker on the window when you go to a barbershop, and it would say, "I've been approved by so and so licensing board or organization."
Some of it's bullshit. 5,000 is too much though. But.
There are all sorts of things that we would do if the government was not doing them.
Do you have a black barber?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
Actually, I have a black barber for 25, 30 years. He got cancer, and now the person that owns the shop, who is Latina, cuts my hair.
Okay. I do want to ask one final question. When do you think systemic racism ended? Since you said it don't exist anymore, when did it end?
I can't come up with a specific time, but Civil Rights Act of 1964, Brown versus Board of Education, the Loving versus Virginia Act that struck down race mixing. You couldn't, for 13 states, you couldn't marry a white woman. Again, I think that when Barack Obama got elected, that was a big deal. When Obama got elected, this is really important. He got elected with a little more than 52% of the vote. He walks into the Oval Office the third week of January. He had a 70% approval. Now, how can that be? How can 15% all of a sudden support this man? It wasn't because they wanted capital gains taxes raised, which Obama promised to do. It wasn't because of Obamacare, which Obama promised to do. It's because many Americans said at the very least, he'll stop the nonsense that America remains systemically racist. And for 8 years, in my humble opinion, he played race card after race card after race card. So when he entered the Oval Office, both blacks and whites thought race relations would get better. When he left, both blacks and whites thought they got worse. Why? Because he did things like the Cambridge police acted stupidly when they didn't. If I had a son, he looked like Trayvon. When what happened to Trayvon had nothing to do with his race. He embraced Black Lives Matter. He invited Al Sharpton in the White House over 70 times. He said that racism is in America's DNA. He said all sorts of things so that when he left, both blacks and whites thought race relations got worse.
Right, but sir, this is where and we can just agree to disagree, because you're mixing race relations and voters, what voters decided to do, who might just be very good people that decided to elect a black man, confusing with institutional system racism. And those are just two totally different things. And it's okay if we just agree to disagree. I'm talking about structures, not what voters did, or voters wanted to see better race relations. We're talking about structures, the same structures that you referenced several times that have also spited you. So that's
Joe Biden, for example, when Georgia reformed its law, said it was worse than Jim Crow. It's Jim Eagle. More blacks voted in Georgia than ever before. The percentage of blacks increased. If the structure, how is it that the structure did not stop black people from voting in Georgia?
Well, I'm not talking about voting, sir. I'm talking about, and just to be fair, I think Joe Biden and what Joe Biden did to African Americans, particularly with the war on drugs, was one of the worst things that actually happened to black people. Just to put that on the record, he too was a part of that system that I'm talking about. Democrats as well. I just try to stay balanced to say that same system applies on both sides. Democrats and Republicans helped with mass incarceration. Joe Biden wrote it. So we have no problem, or I have no problem condemning him as a Democrat for what he's done. I'm just talking about institutions versus relations are just two totally different things. And that's just where we, just disagree with that. And that's okay.
Well, we didn't really get into mass incarceration, but most people who are behind bars because they committed a violent crime against somebody else. And often the black people who are behind bars committed a violent crime against another black person.
Well, when I'm talking about mass incarceration, I'm not talking about violent crimes. I'm talking about nonviolent crimes, particularly the war on drugs. I was very clear in what I said.
I agree with you that I believe that the drug problem should be dealt with as a health problem rather than a criminal justice problem. But most people are not behind bars for using drugs or for dealing drugs. They're behind bars for having committed a violent act against another person.
Sure, but that wasn't what I was talking about. I was very clear when I talked about Joe Biden writing the crime bill and mass incarceration with war on drugs to nonviolent offenders. So that's a different conversation. You're weaving the two together. So we just have a disagreement on institutions versus race relations, and that's okay.
Well, in order for you to go to jail, you have to commit a crime. If you walk down the street,
not always when you're black in America.
Well, where are the class action lawsuits, Charlemagne? We have all these black lawyers. Many black people have gone to law school. Where are the class action lawsuits claiming that a bunch of people are behind bars illegally, wrongfully. Where are they?
So you think everybody that's behind bars?
I didn't say that.
Behind bars
I didn't say that. Why don't you answer my question? Where are the class action lawsuits?
Well, you got to need money to do class action lawsuits.
You've had a black attorney general, Eric Holder. You had back-to-back black attorneys general, Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. Why didn't they release a whole bunch of people who are illegally behind bars? Why didn't they do that? You had a black president.
And I criticized them as well. Went on record because actually you're right. He lied and said that he was going to fix the crack cocaine disparity. So I went on record. You're right. And guess what? Guess who he works for? The system. So he's just a blackface that works for the system at the time. So again, we just disagree on systems and institutions versus black faces in high places.
Well, the disparity has been rectified. Now you go to jail for dealing powder as you do for dealing crack, and at one time there was a disparity.
No, you go to jail, but the ratio's not the same.
Well, because the dealers are not the same. For example, there are more white people behind bars for drunk driving than there are black people. There are certain categories of crime that whites commit.
Mr. Elder, you're talking
depends
about
on the drug. More whites are behind bars for meth than blacks
are. You're just going all over the place, sir. We were talking about very clear.
You said drugs. It depends on the category of drug. It depends on the category of drugs. More whites are involved in meth than blacks.
I gave you the category that I wanted to talk about. Then you start talking about drinking. You're just all over the place, Mr. Elder. But it's okay.
More blacks are involved in crack cocaine. More whites are involved in powder. More whites are involved in meth than blacks. Depends on the category of the drug you're talking about.
And I was talking about a very clear category. And I gave you, I told you where I just criticized the black man who was in charge, and you skipped over that and went right to talking about drunk driving. So again, sir, I have no problem with criticizing black Democrats. We do that. Charlemagne does that all the time. It's just the imbalance of understanding that even black faces in high places, even including yours and Democrats, Republicans, just being fair across the board. That's all.
Well, that to me basically is no different than what Joe Biden just did with Charlemagne, which is to tell me as a black person I got to think a certain kind of way, otherwise I'm not black.
And I didn't like that either.
Well, you just did.
I didn't like that either.
You just did. You call me a black face as if I'm supposed to think a certain kind of way.
No, I said blackface. I said blackface in high places. I said they're everywhere. You're a blackface. You're in a high place. You're running for president of the United States. That's a high place, and you are a blackface, correct? I said so. There's blackface in high places on both sides. So it's just about being fair for me on both sides. I've mentioned
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mentioned several Democrats that I have a problem with. Several, including Joe Biden. So you don't have to sell us on that. We get that. I'm just saying it also happens on the Republican side. That's all. And black conservatives agree with a lot of your messages, Mr. Elder. But when you're not balanced across the board, it just kind of lands flat. That's all.
Whose cocaine do you think it was in the White House? Since we're talking about drugs.
I have no idea. All I know is that it seems to me it's to be scary that that Secret Service has closed the investigation without identifying a suspect. What other kind of stuff goes in and out of the White House without anybody knowing about it? But I have no idea. I just think it's bizarre that the investigation all of a sudden got closed that fast.
And you think criminal charges should be brought against President Biden, right?
I think there certainly should be an investigation about the pay-for-play stuff that we're hearing. The IRS whistleblowers are saying that they were told to stand down in their investigation. I think there's a double standard going on, as I said earlier. For example, Donald Trump has been indicted for document possession. There is a special counsel investigating Joe Biden for document possession. But his defenders are saying, well, Joe Biden, unlike Donald Trump, turned over the documents readily when they were found out to have them. And if that's the case, why is the investigation still taking so long?
Tell them how they can support your campaign.
LarryElder.com. I need $1 from 40,000 individuals, even if you want somebody else, to talk about some of the issues that Charlemagne and I have been talking about for the last several minutes. I can get them front and center. So LarryElder.com, $1, 40,000 individuals. I will see you on August 23rd in Milwaukee.
All right, it's Larry Elder.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up. In the morning. The Breakfast Club.
I don't have too much more to say on this video, except for that it's really shameful and disgraceful how these people use their platform to really ridicule this man and also Vivek Ramaswamy. And I would guess whoever else would go on their program who's on the other side. I'd be curious to see how they treat somebody who's running against Joe Biden. Well, RFK, they're going to treat him like trash. But there's nobody else. Oh, Miriamson? I mean, she's a joke. That's not even really happening. But again, they don't want anybody running against Joe. So therefore, whoever comes to the interview, they're going to be upset with them. But it's so interesting to listen to them and watch how the conversation goes. They are truly disgraceful, disrespectful, and frankly just plain old ghetto. Plain old ghetto. And I hope that their listeners really do wake up, because this is really shameful that you would speak to a black man, an accomplished black man, the way they did at Larry Elder. It makes no sense to me, none. I really do hope that their listeners start to pull away and say, you know what, miss me with this nonsense. They are the gatekeepers for these people. That 5 million, over 5 million, almost 5.5 million. They are really the gatekeepers, feeding these people the nonsense that keep these people voting Democrat. They really do. I mean, they know all of these bad things that the Democrats have done. You know, they know all of these things. And because of that, they put Kamala Harris on the ticket to get the black vote. Oh, yeah, the first black vice president. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And it's a woman. She's got a vagina. You know? That's what he said. I'm gonna put a woman with, I'm gonna put a black person with a vagina in. Kamala. And it's really disgraceful. Affirmative action, vice president. Oh God. It's truly sad. I really do wish black people would wake up. I really wish black people would wake up and see who is really against you. These people are against school choice. These people are against the economy. These people are against drilling and getting our economics in the right shape. But they'll send money to Ukraine to protect them. They'll leave our borders open. And again, the people that suffers the most are the lower income people, the people at the bottom of the barrel. They're the first ones to go. So I'm going to finish this video. It has been a long process getting this video done. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all for watching, subscribing, sharing the content. I think I'm going to break this down. I will break this down into smaller bites. So we'll have smaller segments of it. So there'll be a few different videos based on this very large one. And so that way you can also get those in smaller bites if you're not able to sit down and watch this whole thing. Like just me doing it was a labor of love for you. Like it was really, really tough. God knows it was tough. There were moments in the video you can tell I was done, but I struggled on. I pushed through because I wanted to bring this content to you. So thank you all very much. Share it, subscribe. I am trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by Christmas. The numbers are looking good. I'm grateful for all of the support, the comments. And you know, you guys know if you've been commenting, I've been on that. I've been like responding like right away. And I'm like chatting, and it's been so much fun doing that. So please bring the comments, continue to comment. It really inspires me to continue to do this. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video.